This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
We are now in the fourth and final day of the 50th annual 4F convention here in Buffalo, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the first couple of episodes that we have presented. Actually, I guess there have been two. That's right. We had day 1 and 2 combined, and then day 3, and now we are here for day 4, and going to do a little bit of a recap of last evening's show with Marc DeSouza, who did feature Marc DeSouza in the show last night. So he can talk about how good he was, and then I will tell you about the real Marc DeSouza. No. Anyhow, good morning, Marc. Hey, man.
Good morning, Scotty. It's good to see you.
You as well, my friend. So last evening, before we get into that, yesterday we did have a pretty good stuff that was going on with Paul Gertner's lecture. I thought you weren't at his lecture, but it was...
No.
Okay.
It was the same lecture he did at FISM, which he calls the Fooler's Lecture.
Yes.
And it's basically him talking about the development of the material that he did on Fool Us and the hows and the whys, and went through the explanations of the routines. And what a fascinating lecture it is, not just from the standpoint of just learning great tricks, but learning the mindset and what it takes to put all that together. Boy, did he put it.
Yeah. And he brought a lot of these props with him because he's a little bit closer here now than he was, to going up to Quebec and having to go through customs with all of this stuff and contraptions and whatnot. So, and he said also yesterday at the lecture, he said, I really want to deliver something that's a little bit different to this group because this group is really more interested in close-up and the intricacies that some of the people who have broader interest in FISM may not appreciate as much as what we do. So it was a similar lecture, but more specific with some of the things. One of the things, for an example, that... Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just waving to Greg Fruin.
Oh, hey, yeah, we'll talk to Greg. Going to visit with Greg Fruin tomorrow. Yeah. But anyhow, one of the things, for an example, he was talking about whenever that he had this dice underneath the hat, right. Not the die, which was an amazing thing. I remember talking to Ray Lum on an episode a while back, and he was saying about this secret something that he was building for Paul, and then when he showed it to us, it's like, oh my gosh, I could see what he was talking about, how amazingly well made that was. But this dice explosion that he had when he lifted his hat, right. And it was, and Penn and Teller were saying it was kind of like the cockroaches they had done on David Letterman, a long time ago. But his concept in thinking through that, when you lift it up, you don't want to just have a stack of a bunch of dice, that they need to kind of look like it explodes from underneath the hat, right?
Right. Yeah, he wants that animation of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So he had all kinds of ideas of having strings and whatnot. When he lifted the hat, then it would all kind of separate and everything. But ultimately, I thought it was interesting about how he put magnets on the bottom layer with opposite polar magnetism, so it would push each other apart and everything, And so that way, and also, you can't line them up that way. It actually has to be in some sort of a special tube and everything. The explanation was just amazing. So when you lift it up, that the bottom layer would push itself apart and the rest of the thing would fall.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's that much detailed thinking that goes into making a great routine.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying in the lecture yesterday. I said, by the way, Paul, I said, was that what Penn and Teller did? Did they put magnets on their cockroaches when they lifted the hat?
No, but Paul was working on putting cockroaches under the dice.
Another method. It didn't quite work out. That's right.
No.
Anyhow, very good lecture, and that was fun. And yesterday afternoon...
Also the Ed Talk, the workshop was all about Eddie Fector, and I was really sorry to have missed that because I know there was some great vintage video shown.
It was. The first one that they had shown was one that many of us had seen before. In fact, got copies of this that Dick Cook had put together. You got a copy of that. There was a little 7-minute video or something talking about the Forks Hotel and who Eddie was in the military and all that kind of a thing. And then they actually showed a video of Eddie working at the Forks, doing 3 of his favorite routines. Of course, the sound quality, and it was real grainy and everything, but that's the way that it was back then. And I remember seeing that one the last time we were at the Forks when they were closing the Forks and we were going to have to move someplace the next year. You probably have seen that.
I've got a terrible copy of that video.
Well, there's no good copy of it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, right. It was, I guess, it was actually taped on video originally. But I was lucky enough to have seen Eddie. Mm-hmm. He performed at one of the SAM National Conventions in Philadelphia. It was either 72 or 76. And I had a friend, Ed Voorhees, who was friendly with Eddie. Sure. And so I got to sit in session with Eddie. Boy, was he good. Oh, my gosh.
And so anyhow, they had a good panel discussion. I don't go too much more detail on that because Paul and I talked about that yesterday evening on the podcast. So you go back and listen to that one, a little bit about who was on the panel and everything. But then it came to the evening show, which was the fifth show of Friday's Frolics with the MC of Sean Farquhar. And again, Mark was indisposed. He had other personal obligations, was away yesterday for most of the day, but he was back in time in order to do the show. And you opened the show, I believe, weren't you?
I did. I was the opening act. The opening act. So I did a couple of routines.
Hanging coins, yeah?
Yeah, it was my handling. It's a thing that Johnny Wong put out called Double Phase Triple Coin, I think is what it's called. And there have been various handlings, and I was fascinated by the thing and just spent a lot of time, synthesizing my routine for it and putting together a presentation that worked well. And it's something I use for layman a lot. I mean, it's a great trick.
It's a nice stand-up thing, too. Yeah.
Exactly. You can do it. It's great for it's really more of a parlor-size thing, but you can use it in close-up.
And then you sat down to do a card effect.
And I sat down and did a card effect that's loosely based on Carl Fulves' Gemini Twins, which is a very popular effect. Probably the most popular Carl Fulves effect there is. But I have a little twist on it, and it allows me to do a triple prediction, but it's a whole casino card theme, and I use canceled casino cards and end up with a rainbow deck finish. It's a fun routine, but it did give me the opportunity to wreak revenge on Brian Curry.
We were just talking to him briefly because Brian did a great job. Very funny guy, and he'd made some reference to you, I think, in his show, and so you kind of got him back.
So, exactly, yeah. and I knew I needed help to do it, so I enlisted the group. For Will Fern and David Corsaro and all, and Curry's actually on that email thread. Mm-hmm. So I said. It's not fun if Brian doesn't know it's coming, and he knew it was coming. He was waiting for it, so it was all in good fun.
Yeah. And then next, who was up? Sean again was MC. Did a great job.
Fabulous job. He had a great running thread through the whole thing where he had cards picked, and he would just call that performer out, and he had a lot of great gags, and we'll talk about one of them as we get on. But the performer that followed me was Obi. It was Obi. It was Boris Wild doing his tribute to Obi.
That's right. It was a tribute to Obi, and as you said, that he was one of Obi's adopted sons. Exactly. Sean and Boris and
Henry Evans. Yeah. There's his adopted sons. So it was one of Boris's lovely, music pieces that it's all cards, blind cards that turn to Fs, and it's more than 4 Fs, and then it turns into a picture of Obi.
And he turns them over, very emotional and nice music and everything, as only Boris can do.
Exactly. It's beautifully performed. And he was followed by Michael Ammar, who, he's got some potential. He'll be.
I hope he comes back. I hope we see him again. It's been 25 years since he's last been here, he said. But I was saying, I think that kid's pretty good. He ought to come back.
Michael was his normal, wonderful self. Yeah. He did a really unique signed card to borrowed wallet.
He explained a little bit of that last night in the precursor suite, and brilliant. Fooled the heck out of me, with it's like, oh, yeah, now I got it. But when he had that card side, I thought, okay, well, he's known for the card on ceiling. I was looking at the ceiling. I thought, is he going to do this?
Right. And then he did a multi-phase torn and restored card thing that looked very, very nice. But the finish of the thing where a piece was torn off, a corner was torn off, the person signed the face of the card, he signed the corner, and he fuses it back on but upside down and gives you the card, and it's got the signatures on it.
It's not just fused, it's actually a card.
It is a card.
Mm-hmm.
It is a card.
With the signature.
Yeah, exactly. Beautiful. Andy Gladwin from the UK followed him. Andy, it's just such a pleasure to watch the evolution of Andy as a performer, and boy, he really is a good, solid performer now. It's just really fun stuff.
He performed this series of routines that he did at the senior tour that I just saw last week.
Right.
So it was interesting from a different perspective because actually I was one of the volunteers last week who had assisted him. And so this week, to watching him perform, it's just, he's dynamite. He's just really good. And he was doing a tossed out deck and then a blindfold thing.
Well, the tossed out deck is more than just a tossed out deck.
Well,
he's added a couple of elements to it that really elevated it to a very different effect.
Yes.
Very different effect. And the what he calls the Chip Robinson trick, that blindfold. Boy, that's a real kicker. That's a real kick in the head. and I don't want to explain what it is because it'll ruin it for anybody that
If
sees
you see it, you're going to. But we say blindfold. Actually, it was taped, so his eyes were taped. But it was when you see it, it's amazing.
And before intermission, Sean was joined by Juicy Starling. Juicy Starling, played by Michael Dardant. Michael, I think, has a whole new career ahead of him.
Well, he does live in New Orleans, so he could do drag.
Exactly. And by the way, his makeup was done by Meadow Perry. Meadow and he are friends, and Meadow's here because she's performing at Monti tomorrow.
Okay.
So she came in early just to hang out with Sean.
I was going to say I haven't seen her yet, so
yeah. I just saw her for the first time last night in the Italian suite. So so she did the makeup. It was very, very funny, very, very funny. And so we had an intermission. Coming out of intermission, we had special guests, Penn and Teller, on video.
Yeah.
And they were inviting they were soliciting the 4F members to submit for Full List this season, because this season is going to be a tough season for them. It's normally they do 13 shows. This year they're doing 20. And
they need a lot of material.
They need a lot of material. They need magicians, and they need personal material. I mean, they have to do a new trick every week, and that's a lot of dang material. So in Corsaro's lecture, Ed Talk, he had talked about the Full List and the statistics. That's hard to say at this time in the morning after a late night. Pardon me. The statistics, obviously, of the 4F people who go on Fools are higher than average.
The percentage of those who are attendees of this have statistically fooled them more often than those who have not attended.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was funny. He was followed by Willie Monroe.
Wow.
Willie he's a character.
From Spain, right?
Yeah, not your typical Spanish magician. Very funny guy. I saw this acting competition at FISM.
Yeah.
And we
talked about that. Wasn't it this year in Quebec where we saw it?
Yeah. He unveils this miniature stage with, like trusses and stuff. I mean, it's really cool.
It's about the size of maybe 3 shoe boxes. You can imagine about that size-ish.
Yeah, about that. And he introduces righteous and leftists. And as his hands come through the curtain. And he does illusions with Rubik's Cubes. He starts with a zigzag Rubik's Cube that really, when you look at it, is pretty damn impossible. I mean, the gyrations this thing goes through.
He manipulated the Rubik's Cube to begin with before he put it in the box very cleanly with all 4 sides showing, and then proceeded to
slice it into thirds and move the middle out, and then move one piece the other way.
Twisting them around.
Oh, yeah. They twisted the individual pieces. It was really very, very clever.
Yeah. And then taking it out and then showing somebody, showing Gene Anderson right in front, say, hey, he took it and twisted it back together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then he does a levitation with it, like a full stage levitation on a miniature stage. And he finishes with a sub-trunk with a cube and a triangular, pyramid Rubik's Cube. Yeah. Very clean looking, very
fast.
Yeah, and on the surface of it, you just kind of go, oh, this is a very funny idea. But then when you think about it, damn, these tricks actually are pretty good.
It was very good, yeah, because he had a little curtain, where I think the leftists actually pulled the little curtain that was, the hoop.
The hoop that passed over the floating cube.
Yeah.
Very fair looking, very cool. And so Rick Wilcox followed him, and Rick, does a big illusion show out in the Wisconsin Dells. He opened with the birdcage vanish. Now, Rick had posted video of him backstage doing the birdcage, and I saw Rick the first day. I said, undoubtedly best birdcage I've ever seen. Just phenomenal. I mean, it just looks beautiful. And he not only did it last night, he repeated it, and then took his jacket off. So
and did the rest of his act with his jacket off.
Exactly. So I know there were a lot of guys scratching their heads over that one. That was a very, very clever thing. And he followed that up with a a number prediction, which unfortunately he was off a couple of digits.
Off by 2.
He should have had that prediction.
Yeah.
Off by 2. But
he wasn't expecting that.
No, he was not. And He redeemed himself with his handling of Dean Dell's coin explosion. So very nicely done. Good routine.
He does that as part of his regular show in a stage show. When I've seen him in the Dells, where he has a big iMac, a big monitor, and he does that coin explosion there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, he's done it over and over and over.
Yeah. Because that's a piece you have to do all the time, or you forget the sequence of what you have to do. But it was handled very nicely. He was followed by Bernardo Sedlacek from Brazil, who did this absolutely impossible thing. First of all, he had people raise their hands. He says, everybody raise your hands. Okay, put your hands down if you don't want to help me with a trick. So about half the hands went down. He says, okay, everybody with your hands up, come up. I want you to stand behind me. I want you to circle all around me for my act. So he was fully surrounded.
Yeah, there were like about 20 people or 30.
Oh, there was more than that. There was like 40 people up there. And he hands somebody, he has somebody sit in his seat, hands somebody a deck, takes it out, he shuffles it, he has them put it under the table, shuffle the deck, cut the deck, take out a card, reverse the card in the pack, put it back in the pack, put the card case put it back in the case, bring it up onto the table.
All under the table, not
all
seeing
under
anything.
The table. Nobody's seeing anything. And then, basically he reveals the card, and it's just a problem. I said he should have just walked off after that, but thank God he didn't, because the rest of the act was phenomenal. He did another routine where he was apparently memorizing all of the other cards that weren't chosen, so he could reveal the chosen card. He did a fantastic oil and water. I mean, no, I got no clue. I mean, this was fantastic. And then he does revelation of any card named under, again, impossible conditions. I said afterwards, I asked him, I said, are you truly in league with the devil? I mean, it's the only explanation.
And I do like his ending as well. He was saying, you can look at the card, or you can just slide it back into the deck. And, only you will know, and this will be an experience that you can remember, rather than spoiling it for everybody, or if you want to, you're not spoiling it. It's your decision. Thank you, good night. He walked off. And, like, the 40 people looking around saying, should I look at the card? Mark Fitzgerald was the one who was sitting there, and Mark said, what do you think, folks? Should I look at the card? Mark, what did I say? Fitzgerald? Yeah, Mark Yeager, pardon me. Mark Yeager was. He said, what should I do? And we said, yeah, look at it. No, don't look at it. Yeah, look at it.
No, then somebody said, well, you can just peek at it yourself, and we'll know if it's right or not.
By his expression.
Yeah, but then he turned it over and showed it. And it was just phenomenal. But I told Bernardo, I said, that was a very Maven-esque kind of finish.
It was very Maven-esque, exactly.
Yes. So kind of nice tribute. And the show was closed out by our buddy Chris Capehart. Again, Chris is just such a iconic at this point persona. I mean, bigger than life. He really is very, very funny. He did a bit with multiplying card cases, and said, well, after my lecture, I'm not going to do any card tricks. Yeah. He had trouble with a couple of card tricks. But he did his bit with a light bulb that lights up in his hands and then in a spectator's hands. Looks great. And he finished with this trick that he talks about being a Jedi, and he uses the Force. And it's a folded piece of cardboard that he just looks at, and it falls over. And then walks away from it and looks at it, and it falls over. And he just does it like 4 or 5 times. It's just more and more impossible every time he does it. It's a really cool thing.
And then at the very end, he's actually probably 15 feet away from it.
Absolutely.
And it's just like whenever he moves his hand towards that, he said, now it's going to go off the table. It just looked like it just blew completely.
It flew off the table. It's like a Jedi using the Force to bowl somebody over.
Yeah.
Only it was a piece of cardboard instead of a person.
Yeah, that was very impressive. Now, folks, just listen to that lineup then again. I mean, and that's just the Friday night show. We got still tonight to Saturday, but read just the names on there again, starting with...
I was low man on the totem pole. It's like,
no.
Hey, why am I on this show?
With Sean Farquhar to begin with MC.
Yeah.
And read it off.
So, it was me, Michael Ammar, Boris Wild, Andy Gladwin, Rick Wilcox, Willie Monroe, Bernardo Sedlacek, and Chris Capehart.
Man,
great show.
Most conventions would die to get half of those guys, in there.
Oh, absolutely. 2 of those acts on the convention is going to make it.
What are we going to be having tonight?
We've got, this afternoon we've got a one-man show, which is the first... everybody's saying it's the first time it's been done. I don't think that's the case. I think the first time it was done was when Del Rey did it at the Old Forks. I think he basically did a one-man show there. Now, maybe he was like the ending of a show and did 40 minutes, but, no, tonight Steve Beam is emceeing. Steve is just, his wit is like as dry as a desert. It's just so funny, but it's Montreal.
Spot on.
Yeah, the Montreal trio, Michel Huot and Yannick Lacroix, Marc Trudel, Alexandre Devivier, Shudogawa, Mike Robinson, who, casual listeners have no idea who Mike Robinson is. Mike Robinson is a magician and ventriloquist, and I don't know whose ass the dummy's going to kick.
That's funny, because he's not here.
Exactly.
For those who are listening and listen to this podcast regularly, I would suggest to go back to the archives, because I had done an episode with Mike Robinson, and I was speaking to him just last evening, and he was coming over to me, and he said, "Man, I want to tell you how many people have been coming up to me, since," and that was like 10 years ago. It was one of my early podcast episodes, and they're still coming up, and talking with him, and he's gotten a lot of mileage out of that. I said, "So thank you."
Yeah, Mike is just a very talented guy. He works a lot of cruise ships.
Yeah.
Harriet Wu, Carisa Hendrix, who I'm assuming is not performing as Carisa Hendrix, Juliana Chen, and finish with Steve Bargatze and Rick Merrill, which is kind of like a comedy recap of everything that happened. And I know I'm going to get my butt reamed out tonight because I made fun of Steve Bargatze and Rick Merrill last night. So,
you'll be in their radar. Yeah, I'm sure.
So, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for my turn. They get the last laugh.
Very satisfactory show yesterday. A very satisfactory last 3 days, and I'm looking forward still to today. It's interesting that we don't have really anything on the agenda until 1:30 this afternoon. Absolutely nothing here this morning.
Well, Friday night's the night that everybody stays up late and parties hardy.
As I did. I got to bed about 3 this morning.
Yep, I got to bed at 2. So, yeah.
And you didn't make it to the precursor suite, you said.
I didn't. I've got to get up there tonight just to say hi. But I tend to hang out in the Italian suite. And,
well, you can only drink so much limoncello.
And I was hanging out with Keith Fields, and we started talking ukuleles, and so he brought his uke down for me to take a look at. So that's costing me money now, because when I get home I have to order one. It's a really nice little uke. But boy, Keith brought it out when he emceed the show and didn't play a single note on it, and what a pity, because last night he was playing stuff up in the sea. Mm-hmm. He learned how to play Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yep.
And he said, "Boy, I'm rusty on this. I haven't played it for a while." And man, he got through it all. It was incredible. He said it took him 3 years to learn it.
Yeah, he said during COVID. And I had recorded that, actually. And so when we were at Abbott's one year, and he was sitting out there on Gerald Costello's back porch, and so I had recorded the thing, put it on YouTube, so it's I'll see if I can put a link on the blog so you guys can go back and listen to that, doing the Bohemian Rhapsody. Absolutely amazing on a ukulele.
Yeah, fantastic. But both he and I mean, I love you, but I mess around with it. I'm not a player.
Yeah.
But, boy, when I hear somebody that's that good, it makes me want to get it out and practice again. So.
But, again, everybody's up late last night, so they're letting everyone sleep in here this morning, and people are kind of straggling in here for breakfast, a few at a time, it seems like. And I'm going to go and work on the podcast a little bit, fine-tuning the last couple of days, because since I went to bed early, I haven't posted some things, some pictures, and some stuff that I need to do over there. So, anyhow, looking forward to this afternoon and the rest of the activities, and then tonight. So, and we will get back together afterwards to recap.
Tonight, we'll do the recap of today's activities, and then we go home.
Well, you do.
I do.
I'm going to be going to Monti, which I want everyone then to hang around for another day and listen to another completely different kind of a convention.
Yeah. I get up in the morning. I try to spin through the dealer room at Monti before I get on the road, because very different set of dealers than we have here at 4F.
Well, that's true. That's true too. Mark, thanks very much. We will talk later today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scotty.
So the Magic Word Podcast. That was Marc DeSouza. This is Scotty out. Well, we just finished with Eric DeCamp's one-man show. This is one of the first times if ever, I think, that they've had actually a one-man show, because typically in the afternoon they always have several people.
Yeah.
But he did a variety of things. And I'm here, by the way, with Michael Ammar. Hey, Michael. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Scott.
Wasn't that an amazing show?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I've always loved Eric's performances. He did a couple of new things for me that I haven't seen. And,
I've always liked that tribute he does to Renee Levon with the one arm.
Yeah, he does a beautiful job with that. And but there were several pieces I'd never seen him do, and a couple of signature pieces that he didn't do. You know, he's got a great cups and balls routine.
Right.
He's got the
leather cup
the
with
cups and
Ramsey
cylinder,
thing.
the Ramsey cups and cylinder thing. So it was a wonderful performance. You know? And everybody clearly enjoyed it.
With a standing ovation.
Yeah, two standing ovations. So
that was.
it's no small thing.
Well, he's been doing this for a while, so he has kind of been rehearsing this enough, you know, and doing
Yeah,
it. So, but
yeah.
to get that kind of respect from his peers, I think he
Yeah,
really appreciates
exactly.
it.
And it was an audience aware performance. You know, he knew he was performing for magicians and made that work.
Now, you've not been here for, like, what did you say, 25 years?
42 years. 42. I
Wait,
was here
wait,
in
that was the last time?
1981.
Okay.
1981.
Okay.
So 42 years. Roomed with
So they
Bob
finally let
Elliott
you back,
and Darryl.
huh?
Yeah, so finally, it took me a while to talk him into it.
To get out of prison, to get out of Obi prison, you get okay.
But for the longest time, it was like I had the Fector's curse. It was I would get booked that weekend, and I would say to myself, okay, next year definitely I'm going to make it, and something would come up, and it's like I got to take this, and you know, and it was a weird thing that why that one weekend every year it was
a different thing. It wasn't like the same kind of
no,
festival
it
or
was
corporate deal. Or...
Really, just like out of the blue, different things.
Yeah.
And you know, but at least Opie didn't forget me. You know.
Well, now you
still
were
send the invitation.
a guest of honor too, weren't you? Way back when you have
no,
Okay,
yeah,
well that's
I
the
mean,
reason.
in 1981, that was Darryl and I roomed together. In '81. And that was
Because Darryl, I know, was a guest of honor in later years.
Yeah,
you weren't here for that then.
No,
Okay.
no.
But you were working again.
I was working someplace. But it was a real treat to get to come back, and I've sure loved every minute and want to sign up for next year. So I figure if I sign up in advance, if something else comes up, I get to say, hey, I'm already booked.
Prepaid.
I'm already booked.
So are you working on some things then right now, or you kind of go in a different stage of your life then?
Well,
right
actually,
now,
I've been working on these curriculums for a number of years, and those are kind of wrapped up at this point. I've got a couple more to do, but really getting back into the magic scene. Really, the curriculums really took me off the main focus of magic for magicians and stuff like that. So,
right.
I mean, that was my, main focus.
Right.
For almost 10 years now. But now I'm going to start saying yes to everything, and then going back out again.
Well, your youngest son, is kind of now...
He's almost 18.
He's almost getting out of the house.
Almost 18. But we're never going to have an empty nest. I don't think. I mean, the 22-year-old moved back in and looks perfectly comfortable.
Sure, boomerang kids, but they keep coming back.
But I lived with my parents till I was 30. Which really helped. Focus just on magic. I wasn't having to pay rent or mortgage someplace, so that really helped me put all my, efforts into just being in the magic world.
Right.
And so that was a real benefit. So if my kids turn out to be the same, that's okay.
Fine too.
Yeah.
So as far as some of the things you're working on then too, are you working on another instruction manual or something for the teaching that you're doing, you're saying, or something?
Actually, I just want to get back into performing more.
Okay.
The thing is,
like at conventions and things?
like 40 years of doing some of the same things, and just kind of working on a subset of stuff that I've already been doing. I just want to kind of immerse in it for a bit and start doing new stuff, finding new things to work on.
One of my favorite questions I always like to ask you, this is something that goes way back, in which that you had said one time at a lecture early on that if you were going to perform for the Pope, you would do this trick, and it was the coins through the
Through
the silver.
Right, that was, and a decision like that is what can you do in a perfectly comfortable way, in those pressure situations. Sometimes people say, this is a special thing, I want to do a special trick.
Right, exactly.
And now they're not sure if it's going to work, or, in those situations, whether it's television or performing for the group last night, I want to pick something that I can do without thinking about it,
right.
And just be comfortable.
Sure.
And I think that, an audience if you connect with an audience, they feel for you. And if they can tell that you're anxious or nervous or something like that, they feel that as well.
Exactly.
And so it's a performer owes it to his audience, to put them at ease by being at ease, as you perform, and that's a big part of it.
So what is it now that you feel most comfortable? I guess like what you were doing last night, like
some of the things. Yeah, that was a set that I could do without thinking about it, and that's different. It's whatever you got current.
Right.
What have you been doing a lot of recently?
Right.
So that's the way I look at that. Is just like what's the current stuff that you can do, because not everything, maintain everything in your repertoire.
Right.
Things come and go. Right. Yeah. So you work in cycles of things, sure. and that was from the current cycle.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense, because I was having this conversation with someone a few months ago, in fact, and I had given that example, and I said, what would you do? And he said, well, it would be whatever I'm working on, whatever's current that I feel comfortable with.
Exactly.
It was the exact same answer you just gave.
Exactly, because that's a big part of it. You've been comfortable and knowing what you're doing. And being able to relegate all of that to subconscious stuff, autopilot.
Exactly.
Because the main focus is looking at people and
engaging,
projecting.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for what you have been doing and have done and continue to do for the
kept you up
community.
late last night, didn't I?
Yes, we did.
About 3 o'clock.
And also, thanks for getting me started with the podcast.
Yeah, it's my fault. But hey, man, it's wonderful.
Thank you.
It's wonderful. You're an asset to the whole community for doing this.
You've always been an inspiration.
Yeah, you're the best, man. I love it. 40 some years for you as well.
So that's true.
So 1980,
we were
81.
Friends, back in the Golly, in Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
Yeah,
exactly. Those
Fun
times. Good times.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate your
Great
friendship, and thanks again for everything.
Let's
you
do this again in 40 years.
Yeah, that's right. For the Magic Word Podcast. That was Michael Ammar. Scotty out. Well, we just finished the Ed Talk this afternoon, and we had 3 different people. Of course, this was, the first one and the second one were both hosted by Christian and Catalina, and they talked at the end, had their own presentation, but there was the first one that Rick Wilcox talked a little bit about his experiences as an illusionist, which is kind of interesting for a close-up convention, but I think everyone's got a little bit of experience with that as well. And I thought one of the standout things for me was Keith Fields talking about audience management, which is always something that we can really get into a lot of detail about. And he's got a lot of experience having actually started on the street and learning how to manage an audience, as well as having on theater and other kinds of shows that you've been doing. And I've got him with me right now. Here's Keith Fields.
I'm Keith. Right here. You're only saying those nice things because they're true. So thank you very much for that.
And happy birthday, by the way, too.
Oh, thank you.
Today is your day.
Yes, please feel free to send money, not cards.
So one of the things I thought you were going to be talking about is audience selection also. That's one of the most difficult things that I find. And you did, I guess, kind of touched on that as far as...
I got to it in the end, but unfortunately with all these things, I have got probably another 3 pages of notes that I wanted to cover. But the things I mentioned in terms of audience, the biggest thing I look for is someone that's making and keeping eye contact with me when I'm obviously, so I put the suggestion out there, I'm looking for someone to help me, and I'm looking for, a lot of people will immediately start looking away. In fact, a lot of people do the joke about, when I look for a volunteer, it's amazing how often people look at their shoes,
right?
Which is a joke I've heard from many people. It's a good line, and please use it. If you haven't, you'll get a good reaction from it. But the opposite of it is also true. People who want to help you will look at you, and they will they're almost like an expectant puppy. They're sort of looking up. You going, are you going to play with me, please? Can I play? There are people in the audience who really want to join in, and I think you are much, much better having that person on stage than having someone on stage that doesn't want to be there.
What about the opportunity? People who will say, pick her. They're pointing to somebody.
Yeah.
And they'll say, like, it's usually a husband pointing at the wife, and she's, of course, if she's saying no, but sometimes she's kind of smiling, like, well, I guess I'd be okay. What are your thoughts on that?
If they're doing the latter, if they are smiling and sort of going, yeah, all right then I will pick them. But if someone says, pick this person here, I usually do a comedy bit on that, and I sort of talk to them about, so why is it you want that person up there and not you? Because I sort of act as if I'm going to pick on the person that pointed someone else out, but then I would usually move away from them both, because there's quite often something going on there that I don't want.
That's very true. That's kind of the way that I always look at that. First of all, this person who's pointing is usually the alpha person, because sometimes I've heard some guys say, well, I'm going to pick you because you're the one who's choosing someone else.
Yeah, I wouldn't
do that. No, I don't think so either.
Do that, because they also, they could be the troublemaker.
Exactly.
Easily,
you don't want that on stage.
No.
Yeah, they're trying to one-up you.
Yeah, I think Josh J did some very interesting research on getting audience members up, and I think he ended up with the concept of actually, literally, he would actually ask someone to put their hand up and would pick someone that put their hand up. But I have had interesting experiences of audience members being too keen to want to help. They came to the show and they wanted to get on stage, and sometimes those people can be a little bit too effusive and too energetic, and you have to be an experienced performer to keep control of that situation.
Well, that's true.
One of the things I didn't get to mention, which I think is also important, is the idea of having more than one person on stage. I have two routines which use multi-people. One of them is a kids' routine which uses 8 people, and one of them is an adults' routine which uses 5 people. And I find that the safety in numbers concept really comes into play. With the adult routine, I get the one person up and I get him to do something which is only slightly silly. And then the second person comes up and they have to do something slightly silly. And at that point, the rest of the audience, they get it. They get that they're going to go on stage, they're going to do something slightly silly. But when I get to the fourth person who does something which is probably the biggest laugh in the show, and it's kind of one of those moments that you look at and you go, how on earth do you get that person? I'm not going to say what it is, but how do you get that person to do that thing? It's because they've already bought into the process.
It's conditioned it.
They know the first person did something silly, got a laugh. The second person did something silly, got a laugh. The third person did something silly, got a laugh. At this point, it's easier to go along with it. And that person gets a huge laugh. I was interested, remember the last Ed talks that we had, a guy was talking about hypnosis in close-up.
Right.
And I think a lot of what he was talking about in terms of establishing compliance, people that want to take part in the experiment, all that stuff also applies to choosing audience members. And if we think like a hypnotist thinks, they get a chance to educate the audience into what they're going to do and what they're going to expect. We have to do that, but we have to do it a lot more quickly and a lot more subtly.
I kind of like the idea also that it was very subtle when you're saying, I want whoever's interested, raise your hand, and you don't raise it high, you just kind of raise it to about shoulder length.
I don't actually ask them to raise their hand if I'm using that technique. I raise my hand and I say, I'm looking for someone to help me on stage.
And you're not raising it high, you just kind of...
I'm raising my hand up to just my shoulder height, and in the audience I will see 3 or 4 people do exactly the same thing, saying, pick me, pick me.
You know they're not going to be too effusive, as you say, or that it's like, hey, I guess I'd be okay.
And it's usually, as I say, it's the eager puppy look that I'm looking for.
But what about the drunken eye look?
Yes. Well, usually they don't have the ability to look at you. They're looking over your shoulder, or they're looking at the other person they can see next to you that doesn't really exist. So you usually get away with that. No, I do believe that once you've got someone up on stage, it's your job to deal with that situation, and the idea of sending someone back halfway through is something I would never do. I would find some way to finish that piece and get to...
Maybe cut it short?
Yeah, cut it short, get to a good conclusion, so that person is still treated with respect.
Correct.
And, I may not get as much out of the moment as I had hoped, as I would have got with a more sensible person who was easier to control. But I do more harm by sending someone back and say, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
That does more harm to the trust factor between me and the audience than actually getting to a suitable conclusion and then moving on to the next routine. But then that's a lot of professional experience. I always have another routine in my back pocket that I can do if I've got to fill time or something.
Sure, of course. And I was just thinking about having someone who is a little bit inebriated or high or whatever whenever they come on stage.
High can be a fun thing, actually, because it's easy to do magic for high people.
Oh, that's true. But my point I was going to say is when you were, it was wise in saying you don't want to make fun of them and you want them to be a part of it because you don't want to break break that trust you have with the audience and everything, then I think the less said, the best said, and that's where mugging comes in, where you just kind of make these little eyes, or you just kind of. I mean, you don't have to finish because people are making their own jokes.
Yeah, the audience know what's going on, and I think we sometimes we're so concerned with ourselves and our own feelings. Because it's a high-pressure situation standing on stage. It's an incredibly stressful situation, and if you're not used to it and comfortable with it, that stress is magnified. But the audience are also in a situation when they're hyper-aware of everything that's happening, and they are watching every moment, and so they see. Don't think that they don't know what's going on. If someone on stage is messing you around, the audience know.
They do. Yeah, I think you have to give the audience a lot more credit than
I think we should always be doing that. But my belief, my theory of the whole entertainment is I'm taking the audience on a collective journey, and wherever they are. When they start off, they're a room full of individuals. I'm going to turn them. I'm the tour guide, if you like. I turn them into a group, and I say, "My group, follow me," and we go through our destinations. And every destination should be more exciting than the previous destination, and it builds up to a huge finale when it's kind of organised chaos, which hopefully will get a really good reaction from the audience.
And I love the idea also when you come out that one of the first things you want to do is smile. Because a lot of magicians are not doing that.
Yeah, and honestly, I love 4F and I love all the people here, but I see many performers, as people who haven't been here, you have to perform the first time you come, and that's a nerve-wracking situation because of the people who are here.
They're in the lion's den right away.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you just go out there and smile, the whole audience will relax and go, good. They don't know why they're doing it, but this guy looks like he knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. And if someone comes out and they're looking a bit worried because they're thinking about the slides they've got to do or this kind of thing, we know that as well. Mm-hmm. In fact, my best advice is don't come to 4F and try and fool people. Come to 4F and do the trick you do best. Right. The trick you do all the time. If someone says, show me a trick, and that's the trick you carry, that's probably the thing, because you will have more confidence in yourself doing that trick than you will in doing something complex before a room full of people who are probably better at it than you.
I remember a guy one time so clearly who came here, and he was clearly nervous. His first time again for his bachelor's degree he was going for, and he just kind of sat there and looked at the audience, and I think he was trying to calm himself down, and he looked at him and he said, I've got your DVD, I've seen you on television, I've got 3 of your books, I've got your lecture notes, and he's pointing to different people in the audience. He said, what am I doing here? Yeah.
Well,
he got a big laugh, and so it kind of broke the ice.
My first show, I remember Juan Tamariz was sitting, he was the guest of honor that year, and I'm sitting there going, but he was very gracious actually, and in the bar he came up to me and he told me he thought I was very funny, and I was riding high on that one comment probably for the rest of
a long time.
Well, definitely the rest of the 4F convention.
I remember I was doing something and Paul Daniels was in the front seat. He was the guest of honor, 1 year, and my cards were stuck together, and I just had to, and I just stopped and I redid the trick, and I came to a successful conclusion. Well, when he was giving his lecture, and he was talking about sometimes things don't work and you have to just start over, and he looked at me, don't they, Scott? It's like you just do.
And this is a time when there is a supportive audience here, as I believe all magic clubs should be performance orientated, and the Magic Club should be a place where all of us, however experienced, whether we've got years of experience or whether we're newbies, we should be safe and secure in performing something and trying something out at our Magic Club, because it should be a learning place. That's right. Unfortunately, it's not always the way.
That's true. That's true. Well, we could sit and talk for an hour, and perhaps we should sometime.
As we often have.
That's right. But we still got some more to do here yet this evening, and big show tonight.
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to having dinner here shortly, too, then.
Yes,
my stomach's starting to growl.
It's banquet time, isn't it?
It is, that's right. So, with the Magic Word Podcast, that was Keith Fields, Scotty out. One of the other people who was part of the Ed Talk this afternoon actually kicked it off, and that was my friend Rick Wilcox. Hey there, Rick. How are you doing, man?
Good.
Fantastic. I'm doing really good, and I'm doing better after I heard what you had to say. It was kind of an interesting choice of having an illusionist talk to close-up guys.
Yeah.
And yet I saw you over here with someone who's intimate, very involved, with a conversation, want to know more about it. So sure you're going to get a lot more questions and comments.
Maybe, yeah. Well, you never know when you want to do an illusion.
Well, there's so many.
Well,
that's true. Which you may be called on, and I've always said that you have to, if you're an illusionist, you have to have some basic skills in sleight of hand, because it comes into play in illusions. Some people don't think that it is, but I mean, it's just not just. I'm talking about black art or whatever, but there are some sleights that I think that you need to be able to be aware of. Not just blocking and choreography, but there are a lot of things I think that as an illusionist that you have to be skilled in as well.
Well, I was doing sleight of hand before I was doing illusions.
I know.
The only reason I got into illusions is because I had bigger audiences and they wanted a bigger show, and they asked if I could do it, and I said I could.
Yeah.
I couldn't, but I could.
Yeah.
I needed to.
But I like
a
lot of the stuff that you were talking about behind the scenes, as far as what the cost is, and the sweat equity that you put into it as well. And once you get an illusion, you think, okay, I can put this right in. No, it has to be fixed.
It always, and there's so many little things that you have to do to just make sure that it's right. And number one is make sure that the builder knows the measurements and the space that you need to have, because everybody's different.
I had heard about that a long time ago. My first illusion was a metamorphosis that pretty much fits everybody, but was a zigzag. And so someone had said, you've got different sizes, you need to know how tall your assistant is. And so I said, well, I want it to build for my wife's height, and I'm glad I did. And it fit perfect. We used it for years.
If you can have the illusion built around your assistant, even the mini cube zag. I mean, we made
one size doesn't fit all.
We made ours different, and now it's perfect. But everything has to be custom.
It does. And another thing I thought was fascinating, and I thought a great idea, and that is that once an illusion is built by a reputable manufacturer, that you should go there with your assistant and practice and rehearse everything so that you can fine-tune that while you're in the shop.
Right, because they have all the tools. They can fix it so much easier. Otherwise, you need to have a welder, which I do, to be able to have them help you at your place. But why not do it there?
And then second of all, whenever something is shipped, to make sure that you take pictures of it and everything and keep the guy there.
Well, I always make sure when the truck pulls up, I'm ready to take pictures. They open up the gate, and if the case looks damaged in any way, I'm getting pictures on the truck. So you can prove that it was the trucking company. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to make a claim. And then I always open it up. Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, because if you open it up after the guy's already, signed and he's gone.
If you sign the paperwork and he takes off, then you're out of luck. Yeah. So you got to make notations on the bill of lading of what happened, and then you can get a claim and get taken care of. But
fascinating. It's another aspect, I think, again, where a lot of guys are doing card tricks. I think still enjoyed hearing about the world of magic that we are in, and understanding that side of it that some people may not appreciate as much.
Yeah, so. And like I said with the case, don't get an expensive case at the shop. Get it afterwards. Get a one-way case so that you can put the prop together and decide how much of it do you want to have together when it's in your case, so that you can save the time when you get to your corporate event. You don't want, if you want to put that thing together every single corporate event, you're going to get pretty tired.
Yeah.
So I always try to have it together as much as possible, and then build a case for it in that situation.
Right. That makes sense. So then you build the ATAs afterwards, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
Or fiber cases or whatever it is.
Yeah,
but
right. I hadn't thought about that, about how much that you need to have already pre-built, because you can put the pins and everything in there, and the screws and the bolts and whatnot. But that's going to take a lot of time for a setup and tear down.
It's amazing how many times we are transporting the illusions without a case, because we don't want to put it in the case because it packs down too small and we don't have the time.
Right.
So we just leave it in the trailer all set up. Well, that's not a good idea.
Right.
So try to build the case afterwards.
Well, it's fascinating.
When we went to China, we had 18 different cases built, and most of the props were all put together, and we just put them right in the case. So.
Wow, that's right, because you did how many cities in China? That was like 30 or something?
It was a lot. It was 2 months. We were in a different province every other day. Yeah.
And so you kept those illusions together, so you didn't have to put them together and
we still had to put them together, but they were mainly together. But still, it was a lot of work.
And then one last thing, and that was about the casters. I thought it was kind of interesting I didn't realize there were so many different types of casters.
I didn't either, but I've learned over the 25 years there's a lot, and you need to consider that. But if the illusion's really heavy, you can't have rubber casters because you won't be able to move it. And if you want it to be quiet and it's light enough, then you do want rubber casters. And then do you want one-way casters, or do you want it to be more like a bell cart so you can steer it around? And so there's so many different kinds of casters
it makes a big difference because my wife almost died because of a broken caster. The truth, because, and going back to that zigzag then again, it was not made by a reputable dealer, and I say recognized dealer, I should say.
Yeah.
And the casters were just something they probably got at Walmart, or not even Walmart, just someplace that were cheap plastic casters. And it was a heavy illusion, and it did not break down. It was all just one big thing,
It's hard to avoid. There's so many casters. I mean, most of the time you change them out when you get them. That's why I have so many boxes of casters. They're from the illusions when I got them.
But the plastic caster had broken, and when the blades were in, and I'd moved her apart, and so I was wheeling around, and there was a pit in front of us, and I thought I got hung in something because all of a sudden it started to tip forward. And I was trying to roll it, and then she saw herself starting to fall into the pit, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, these blades are going to be going in, and this is going to be a disaster. And I was able to come around and catch it just in time, and then finally put that thing back together. And then I realized it was the caster that's broken. I thought perhaps it was a divot in the floor of the stage or something, or some popcorn or a kernel or something, that had happened. But because of a broken caster, it could have been.
You want to get good quality casters, then always get an extra one when you're traveling, because they do
That's
break.
Good advice.
And when we were in China, twice we had casters that broke on the cases. So we were trying to figure out how to move them around. We had to get some casters, so always have extra ones ready to go.
Yeah. Rick, thanks very much. That was great.
Yeah.
And when people want to come to see your show up in Wisconsin Dells, it's the Rick Walker?
Rick Wilcox.
Walker.
That's fine. You meet a lot of people. Rick Wilcox Theater, and it's just, rickwilcox.com. You can learn all the information about it.
And it's the number one go-to thing by TripAdvisor.
Excellent. Thank you.
I love the show. And thanks very much. So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Rick Wilcox and Scotty.
All right.
Well, we're getting ready to go into dinner, but before we do, I thought it'd be interesting to have a short chat with Darryl Rose. Hey, Darryl.
Hello, how are you?
Fantastic, and you might remember his voice because we did an episode with Darryl some years ago, and then also our friend Boris Wild. Hey there, Boris.
Hey, Scott.
I believe we also had talked at length from time to time. So last night, whenever you were doing your tribute to Obi, that was really a powerful thing, and you had done that before when Obi was still around. I remember you had his picture, didn't you? You just kind of an homage to that. I love you, Obi.
Well, I did it last year during the
was
virtual.
it Zoom? Or?
Yeah, during the virtual 4F, because it was right after he passed away, of course. And since we're going to meet in person, I think I had to do something, about him, because he was, my adoptive father and was my magic dad. And I wanted to pay a tribute to him. But Zoom was fine. But so many people reached out to me after, and they were like, "Oh my God, it was so touching." But we wish we could have seen it live. So I thought this year would be appropriate, since we're back in person, just to do it for everybody else. We couldn't make it last year, but also because it's about something very emotional for me, and I think emotion can go through a screen in a certain way, but it can go straight to your heart when there is no screen and where you're live in the same room.
Well, you can feel that palpable emotion there last night with the standing ovation afterwards, and just getting it amazing.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad I made to the end of the act, because I was so afraid that I couldn't make it until the end. I was like, I'm so poor. It may happen that I would just stop in the middle, go backstage, and cry.
Break down. Yeah. Very good.
So, but I was happy to go to the end, but it was hard.
I had goosebumps, on the back of my yeah, absolutely, and listen, Obi was here for 49 of them. We're here now for the 50th, and we'll just carry on what he and Eddie set up. And of course, we're back to the effective finger flicking products. It's here to stay, because the talent that is in that room now over the last few days has just been incredible. And magic is safe. All these international magicians from around the world coming, meeting with us once a year. Something that they started in 1971. Who'd have thought that 50 years later we're here and doing it? So I'm proud to be a 4F, just as Boris.
How many years have you been coming, Darryl?
I've been coming about 10 years now. So
okay.
And I've already put my name down for next year. So I'll be back, all being well.
Well, this is a good hotel. I kind of hope we come back to the same location.
This is fantastic, and we're 2 blocks away from the original Forks Hotel, so it means something, being here. And I took a little walk up there to see, and just stood there and look at this empty parking lot, but to say, this is where it started, and
right.
It beats Batavia.
It does. That was a little bit out there. I mean, I miss Alex's restaurant. I mean, the steak place was good, but this has a lot more advantages, I think, this location for us.
It does. I mean, we've got a nice steak restaurant across the road there now.
That's
of
true.
course,
Yeah,
the hotel have looked after us. If you like burgers or burgers.
Yep.
But, it's fine. It's good. No, it's. I mean, we're having fun. It's not like French burgers, but there you go.
Well, I remember in some year past that you hosted the All English show, I think, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. That was about 7 years ago, and I think it's about time I thought we bring back a UK contingency. It wasn't just English because there were Scotsmen on there, and and I think there was even a Welshman, a Welsh lady. So don't forget we got the whole of the United Kingdom. We need a Northern Irish person on the next show, but that was good fun. We do have a little bit of talent in the United Kingdom.
Are there any Northern Irishmen who have actually attended this? I can't think of anybody.
I don't think there is, because we got Quentin Reynolds, but he's Southern Ireland.
Right.
He's just the Republic of Ireland. No, I think we need to find a Northern Irish magician to come over.
Is Pat Fallon from North?
Southern, he's from the
Southern
south.
also?
He's southern too. Yeah, it's a very good point. I'll look one up and
Interesting,
try.
isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and find one. Absolutely. But at least we got a huge Scottish delegation this year.
We do
and
have,
a couple of new people.
and also, they were really good. And I think we've had a really good show. I remember in some years past that some people have said, well, the quality was kind of not as good as what it had been, and everybody needs to start stepping up their game as far as people recommending, making sure you recommend someone who is 4F quality. And I don't know whether they took that to heart or what, but it seems like, like this year, everybody was really good.
Oh yeah, they had some really good show, really good
for the first timers.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Especially like for the 50th anniversary, because of course lots of people were expecting a lot from this, anniversary and convention. So it's just so glad to see also like new fresh blood, I would say, and just see like the the one that we know for a long time just coming up with new stuff, and like seeing Paul Gertner yesterday talking about his material for Fulas and all the experience and all the work and effort he has put in his magic, and he's a role model. I mean, you see that, and that I hope like all the younger generation, because you said it's your 10th time, it's my 24th time already. And I feel like I'm an old guy here now, but
that's good. You are.
Well, I'm one step over. I think this is my 35th.
Wow.
I used to come back at the Forks when my first.
Yeah, I know. That's amazing. That's why yesterday we saw like the footage from the Forks Hotel and Eddie Factor. I mean, I'm like, I hope like the guys that just are here for like first timers or like only for a few years, we see that, we get inspired and be like, oh my God, this is. Okay, we're standing on the shoulders of those giants, and that's we need to keep going, because that's what about 4F is.
That's so true. One of the things I don't think people appreciate is air conditioning, because the Forks didn't have air conditioning, and so that's why they had the windows open. And when they were showing those films yesterday, I mean, I knew where I always sat was because they always had the fan and it had a window up, because usually it's like it's cool like it is here this evening.
Yeah.
And so you wanted to have that, because I mean you have 120 bodies or whatever it was you were limited to upstairs. It was hot, sweltering hot. But anyhow, it was a lot of fun. So I'm glad you guys came. Looks like that they're starting to seat for dinner, so I'm getting hungry.
Yeah,
let's go have dinner.
Let's go in.
All right,
enjoy.
All right,
and drink.
Darryl Rose and Boris Wild. There we go. Scotty.
Bon appetit.
You balanced that very well. I am quite surprised.
I have good balance.
I was ready to catch it, but you had like great balance or a very flat head. One of those two things. I don't know.
It could have a flat head. That's a very good point. So I'm here with Carisa Hendrix right now, and so you are out of your Lucy Darling outfit for right now. So it's unusual to see you out of character, and I say character because everyone's gotten to know you just as Lucy over here. It was a great job. So everybody has the picture that has been posted with Juicy Starling.
Oh my gosh.
with Michael Dardon.
That is the greatest thing ever.
I understand that Meadow Perry was the one who did his makeup.
Did the makeup and brought the wig and the dress.
Oh, he did so. Okay.
They came up with that idea that night after I hosted. So they only had like a couple of hours to work on that and come up with that whole thing.
Wow.
Which I think is the most impressive. And it was perfect, like pitch perfect. It was amazing. I did not see it coming.
It must have killed you. You must have thought that was the funniest thing you've seen.
Somewhere out there, a couple people told me there's a video of my reaction. Like somebody just filmed my reaction, and I am literally crying. Like there's tears. It was the greatest thing.
For those who are listening, I would suggest again you go to themagicwordpodcast.com and you can see a picture there of Sean Farquhar and with Juicy Starling, which again is Michael Dardon as Lucy Darling, and it was so funny. And also the bits that he did, like with Ice McDonald and everybody.
All the callbacks. It was amazing. It was perfect in every way. No notes.
No, it was all just kind of
Picture
improvisation.
Perfect. I loved it so much. I was so happy. Feel so flattered. Also, because he threw it together, anything he couldn't get from Meadow Perry, he had to get from someone else. So those shoes he was wearing, the heels he was wearing, were borrowed from Alexandre de Vivier.
Oh.
Yeah, and they were killing him.
Is that right?
Yeah, and today Alexandra's walking around in those same shoes, elegant and gorgeous, like nobody's business. So
right.
Yeah, she has she pulled through on that one.
Did you end up getting a picture just as Carisa with
I have him? 900 pictures.
Okay.
Of Juicy Starling.
But
and
with
me.
the two of you.
Of the two of me, like on my knees, worshiping her in her glory.
You've got to send me at least a couple of those.
I will send you a couple. They are all good. Literally every one of them is perfect.
You've probably never seen anybody do that kind of homage to you.
No, I mean, the Leslie, who is one of the people who works at the Chicago Magic Lounge, dressed up as Lucy for Halloween and did a great job. So there have been a couple of times, and actually, Dardon and Sean Farquhar I did a Lucy Darling look-like contest when we did the online show, and they both dressed up. So that he has dressed up like that before.
It's not his first rodeo as Juicy.
But this was much better. This was like a...
What made this better? Because Sean was there?
Literally everything about it. The whole thing. Also the fact that he was in de Vivier's heels. I mean, come on. You can't top that. That's the greatest thing.
That won't happen again.
We got to go eat.
Hey, up there calling our table. So for the Magic Word Podcast.
Bye, it's food o'clock.
Scotty out. So we were kind of in the middle of this evening's show. Joe Monti, I haven't seen you in so many years, Joe. It's wonderful to see you, my friend.
Scott, it is amazing seeing you because I've been locked away for a few years, especially with this pandemic. And I've had some health problems that blood transfusions because of blood loss took care of. But people ask why I'm here. I'm here because this is like a transfusion for me, a transfusion of magic. It really is. It might sound soppy, but
you feel better.
I swear to God, I feel a million times better. And because it's an arrogance-free atmosphere where people share magic. And that's why it's a family. When people say this is a family, people think they're just being, again, soppy about it. They're not. This is a family because it's look, I have a family, but I know enough about them. Coming here, you find new things, and people will share things, and that's why it's this arrogance-free atmosphere where people share things. They're not worried about sharing whether they're published or not.
Right. They're not holding anything back.
They're holding nothing back. And oh my goodness, the talent here is so amazing. I mean, I feel like a kid again.
Yeah. Wow.
That's the best part.
And when was the last time that you were here?
I was here 3 years ago.
Okay, so just before the pandemic. So okay.
Yeah, before I wasn't at the one they had just prior to the pandemic, but the 2 years before.
Seems like that I recall. Didn't you do something with giant cards?
Oh yeah, the 3-card Joe. Yeah, and all the physical vaudeville stuff, which I love so much.
Are you going to do that again tonight, or?
No. I'm not going to do it tonight. Okay. I wanted to, but they have a tight schedule.
Yeah.
But what I did present to them. I said, I'll do this year, is one that Penn and Teller want me for the 10th season, and that is the 3-card Joe, which I have an ending where I can hand out the cards.
Okay, so you think it might fool them?
I really think this one will fool them. Absolutely. I really do. Now, that is if they're willing enough to say that I'm not old enough, not too old.
Yeah, that you're outside the demographic.
Yeah, which I love what Paul Gertner said about, Teller telling him, don't worry about the age, just wear a damn leather jacket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's good to see you, Scott. It really is.
Joe, it's good to see you, man, and I'm glad you're doing so well and healthy. I mean, given the circumstances that you had and everything, and back here, and I think that's just a lovely quote that you are getting a transfusion of magic that is your lifeblood.
It really is. I mean, you've known me for so many years. I've always look. I never have done magic for the money, even though people have paid me. I used to do open mics for free, and I've done magic shows for free, and I've only done them because every single performance, if a person really loves to perform, every single performance it takes a year off your life. And I really feel that because, oh boy, the last 5 years have been rough.
You really pour a lot into a performance.
Love it. And the audience, that's what it is. The audience are the doctors. I'm the performer. And that reaction, that's the blood of magic. That's what makes people love it.
Did you do some stuff at Monday Night Magic at all recently? Then?
Not recently. I used to do a lot of it, but I live in California, and they're in New York. And last time I was there, I saw Rocco and all that. But I still went to the performance because even watching performances, it makes me feel better.
But I know they've been running it for a long time, and when you were back in New York, I thought that you had performed there for a while.
No, Michael wanted me to, but I have my daughter with me, and sometimes daughters want to go to the mall versus Daddy, where are you going tonight? I'm going off to the Magic thing. But currently she's back in California, and she said when I told her I was coming to a convention. She's 13 now, just from 12 to 13. She said to me, "Convention day? What's a convention?" I said, "Well, think of it as the best years of somebody's life in school, and they're having a reunion. It's like that." And she's like, "I kind of get it, So, yeah, and it really isn't
because you really don't perform at any conventions. This is really the only place I think I see it.
I haven't been at a convention for 10 years, and performing here for these guys, especially. And here's the benefit, I think, of me and why I love to perform here. I'm a close-up guy. I love close-up magic. But the thing that these guys dig is, the close-up magic, but hey, look at that physical stuff you can do that we don't do. And, and so I don't hear the cards being riffled in the back. I don't hear the coins bouncing around.
Right.
They're looking to see if I'm going to hurt myself being funny. So that's why I'm here.
That's right. But you can't hurt yourself doing comedy.
My best.
Try not to.
Yeah, I've got a daughter I've got to raise, so I got to be careful.
You want to kill the audience. You don't want to kill yourself.
Bingo, exactly.
Well, thank you very much. It's awful good seeing you again, buddy.
It's great seeing you, Scott.
So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Joe Monti. Scotty out. The evening show is over, and it was more than satisfying. We talked earlier about the Friday night show being so great with a lot of great talent, and Saturday was tonight just again knocked it out of the park. It was really great with standing ovations throughout the evening. And as promised from this morning, we said when Mark and I talked, we were going to wrap up tonight's show and the convention with this final chat. And so here I am with the man himself.
Hey, Scotty. Good to be here.
And so, good show, didn't you think?
Great show. The only problem was it made my knees hurt. I was getting up and down so often for the standing ovations. It was really great. But, early in the day, we started off, they were kind to us. We didn't start events today until 1:30. Mm-hmm. So we led off with Eric DeCamps doing a one-man show. Mm-hmm. And the only other person I think has ever done a one-man show was Del Rey. And that was probably back in the 80s.
Yeah.
At the old Forks Hotel. And I don't think that was even a full show. I think he did like the second half of the show or something. Mm-hmm. But Eric, magnificent tour de force. It's,
And he well-deserved the MVP award, which he got.
He shared the MVP award with Tom Craven, mm-hmm. Mr. 50, last man standing, only man to have attended all 50 4Fs. But we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yes, we are.
So Eric did a wonderful show. It's his Pure Magic show. And he normally does it for audiences of maybe, 60, 80 people. Mm-hmm. To do it for 225 people.
Of critical magicians.
Exactly. And but he had, video support, and the stuff mm-hmm. looked great. And he does a beautiful glass production, a 3-coin sequence. His handling of John Ramsey's triple restoration.
I've always enjoyed his Dean's box. It's
beautiful.
It's the ultimate.
Yep. And he closed with his new. Well, before that, he did the breadcrumbs. There's a really cool card trick. Mm-hmm. Yep, Rene Lavand, and Lavand gave him permission to do it. Mm-hmm. And really cool card trick, 3-card thing with numbers called Trilogy. Mm-hmm. And he closed. He encored with the Rising cards, which he's been working on for a while. And it's a thing of beauty, and fooled the pants out of everybody. So that was cool.
Like a Hooker card rise in a glass dome thing.
Well, the Hooker card rise is a huge multi-phase thing.
But it was in a glass dome. Maybe that's
it was in a glass dome. Yeah. That was the inspiration.
Yeah.
And he talks about the inspirations, in the old books that he read. And, of course, the Hooker Rising cards really was kind of the inspiration for that. Went into the Ed Talks for the afternoon. Rick Wilcox from Wisconsin Dells, who's got his own theater, beautiful illusion show, spoke about doing illusions. Obviously, the perfect crowd here, a close-up convention. Right. I refer to the talk as illusion aversion therapy. Because if you ever had a thought of doing illusions after that lecture, you're not gonna.
Yeah.
He just took one illusion and talked about everything that went into it. Once he got the illusion, everything he had to do to make the illusion a working piece. Right. And it was a fascinating talk, and Rick is phenomenal. He really did a great job. Keith Fields talked about audience management, and I have a page and a half of notes of that.
And he didn't afterwards as well. They kind of recapped what he had said, and it was amazing.
And he didn't even finish.
Right. And he kind of was rushing. He had so much to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lecture in and of itself. And in fact, I want to talk to Keith about it. I just think that'd be just like a great, 45-minute to an hour talk just on audience management. He has so much real-world experience on it. And
he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. And I can't wait to go through all my notes on that. And Christian and Catalina themselves cleaned up with talking about an intimate seance they created, and everything that kind of went into doing a seance for real people. And they went into literally everything about it.
The workings of it and everything.
Yeah, they do a pre-show thing with pendulums and questions, and then all the props that go into the seance and all of the technical stuff, electronic stuff. And they made a great observation that, if it's a magic trick, it works 100% of the time. If it's a mechanical prop, it works 100% of the time. If it's an electronic prop, it works 70% of the time. So you better have a workaround for that. But really fun. And we had the banquet, which, man, for all the years that we've all been having really, quite frankly, low
standard.
Yeah, low standard food. To the point where so many people just don't go to the banquet. They
go other places, even though we paid for it. It's like, I'm not going to eat here.
But this year, Mike Joseph, who's one of the board, who is a phenomenal caterer, he did the banquet. And boy, that food was top notch. And in fact, I said to Glenn Brown, I said, okay, here's a piece of critique. If you ever have anybody do the food but Mike Joseph again, I'm not coming back. I mean, it's just that good.
Yeah. He even had cannoli for dessert.
Oh, my God. Cannoli, and he had little eclairs and tiramisu.
Yeah, tiramisu.
Okay, so how do you argue with that? That's just the best.
Yeah.
Absolutely the best. So that was a great lead-in for the show tonight. Obviously, they did the
broken wand ceremony.
Oh, right. The one problem with the banquet was, they did try to do some things, including Mayor doing the broken wand ceremony for everybody that we've lost over the last 4 years. But the banquet room, was part of the pool. And so you had kids playing in the pool, screaming and stuff. And there's nothing like a solemn broken wand ceremony with kids screaming in the background.
Disagree. My thought, the whole thing, it brought tears to my eyes of thinking about how alive the children are over the sadness of people who have passed, of thinking there is new life that is going on. It's continuing, even though some have passed.
That's a good point.
And I was listening to these children that were just screaming and having so much fun. And I thought, man, these people have left us, and yet life goes on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Though I will say afterwards, Maria did said, I would have killed the kids, but then I would have had to include their names too. So, yeah, you make lemon out of lemonade. But
or out of kids.
Yeah. So we went on with the evening show, and first they did the roast of Mark Mason, which is not really a roast, of course. Since Steve Beam conducted it, he had a number of lines that poke fun at Mark, but everybody giving him a variety of gifts and things. And Mark really spoke some very heartfelt words, and it was really touching, and he was really touched that he was named guest of honor. So that was terrific. And Obi, before he passed, had actually named several years of guests of honors, and because of the 3 years we didn't have the convention, they decided to put the next 3 guest of honors together. So next year we get 3 guests of honor.
Yeah.
So that'll be kind of interesting. So then we got into the show, which Steve emceed. Dry wit, wonderful guy. I mean, he's a perfect MC.
We spent so much time writing all this very funny stuff.
Yeah. We opened with the Montreal Trio: Michel Huot, Yannick Lacroix, and Marc Trudel. This is a unique act, and Steve personally asked for them to do this act on the show, where it's kind of indescribable, but basically you think they're kind of upside down. And it's all done with a video camera backstage, and they're backstage doing this thing where it looks like there's stuff floating around, and it's just really, really funny. I will say it's a nightmare to set up.
I think I saw something like that on AGT with somebody doing a comedy bit with some years ago.
Yeah, could be. But we had him at MAS a few years ago, and boy.
Very funny. Yeah.
It's very funny and very tough to set up. They were followed by Alexandra Duvivier, who did some really wonderful routines. She has a kind of a gypsy thread routine with tape, Scotch tape. That was fun. And then she did a gypsy thread with a really nice script, followed by a routine with cards with hearts on them, which eventually she makes pictures out of, and turned it over, and it was a picture of Obi. So, very touching little thing, and very, very nice. Followed by Shoot Ogawa.
FISM winner.
FISM winner, and he did the FISM act, which is a manipulative routine with spoons and coins. And that's like saying Yasha Heifetz plays fiddle. It's... what he does with a spoon and coins is it's so imaginative and so beautifully executed. Sure. And he had a little technical problem and fixed it and just went on.
Right.
He's a trooper.
He's a
trooper. Absolutely beautiful. The first half was closed out by 4F favorite Mike Robinson. Despite the fact that Mike does magic, he never does magic at the convention. He always does his vent act with his dummy Terrence. And I was wondering whose ass Terrence was going to kick, and it was Steve Beam's. And you have to know the act to understand what we're talking about. But
boom.
Yeah, boom. Very technically proficient ventriloquist. Great character and very funny.
He doesn't work for us much because he's out making money on cruise ships. This guy's been working all the time.
Yeah, he's always working cruise ships. I've tried to book him in. Can never get him. He's always out on the ships. Really wonderful. Took a break and then came back. Harriet Wu opened the second half with a very visual routine, and I believe the opening is the routine that he did on Penn and Teller Fool Us. And I think he's done it at FISM. He's won FISM. It's a very visual card-changing routine with regular cards changing to cards with bright green faces that begin changing back to the cards and dealing a royal flush. And he ends up with all of the cards turning into green cards with black keyholes in them. Very interesting thing. And then he did a completely different routine with a fresh deck of cards. And from a shuffled deck, and I mean a well-shuffled deck, he produced the 4 aces in an incredibly visual manner. Then he almost immediately dealt out another 5 hearts. And then the entire rest of the hearts just literally appeared. And then he shuffled the pack again, and now it was split in. He asked for another suit.
Divided the suits,
exactly, and produced each of the 3 suits from what looked like an impossibly shuffled deck.
I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was very, very, very cool. Followed by Carisa Hendrix. Lucy let her out to do a show, and she performed as herself and did a couple of routines for us. This wonderful visual trick with her earring, a big hoop earring that vanishes and appears back on her ear, which she repeated. Real fooler. And then did a routine with several coins. in which she counts in the spectator's hands, and one by one they vanish from the spectator's hands and appear in her hands. Mm-hmm. It's very reminiscent of a trick from Bobo called the Terry Lynn Pennies, but she did them with $50, so it was much more visual. Very nice routine, and went off to a nice ovation.
I like what she had to say then, also saying, I want to thank everyone here for letting me be being all of me.
Yeah.
Bring both of our characters in.
Exactly. And I think we all appreciated seeing just Carisa doing Carisa. So, yeah, very cool. She was followed by Juliana Chen, who came on and did one effect, a floating linking ring routine, reminiscent of Victor Voitko, but, in her style, very Juliana style.
Yeah.
Beautifully performed, and it looked great. And when you see something like that, that's a stage trick in a close-up setting, that's pretty cool. And as tradition dictates, Bargatze and Merrill closed the show. They had some very funny bits. Some cutting humor.
And as they always do, they spend a lot of time, of course, with Dave Casero and some others, just kind of looking at what has happened at this convention and then having a whole callback of all the days starting on Wednesday night.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a recap of the convention and the, funny moments that they can take and insult.
And even right up to the last minute within the same show, because they started off with the thing with the trio.
With the Montreal Trio, doing a parody of the Upside Down thing. Yeah. Very as current can be. But ended with something incredibly touching. That was, a wonderful, a dedication to Obi and talking about how Joan and Glenn are taking this forward and moving forward with the convention, and keeping the whole honor of Eddie and Obi alive, and that was just really wonderful. So
yeah, it was a good way to kind of say see you next year,
exactly,
and we're going to keep this all together.
Yep, that's the whole thing, and this is a unique convention. It's it doesn't matter who's on the shows. Because that's not why everybody's here.
Correct.
We're here to hang out with each other. It's family, and several performers during the weekend just made it so clear that, it's not about who's performing on the show. It's, it's not about you showed me this trick or I show you. No, it's you feel like you're family, and everybody's got each other's backs.
I think it was Mark Mason who was saying that I don't want to wish my life away, and I'm not. I'm just saying that I can hardly wait another 61 days until the next one.
Yeah, and it's really true. And we see each other, we see each other at other conventions and stuff, and the people who attend 4F, they do have a special bond. They really do. Yeah. It's unlike any other convention.
That's true. And this has been one of a kind. With the 50th is extra special, I think.
And not only that,
it lived up to its expectations.
Absolutely. And the fact that we haven't seen each other now for, we missed 3 conventions, and so this was extra sweet.
Speaking of which, and all that you've just said, one thing we're missing now that's extra sweet is the hospitality room. I'm going in for donuts.
You betcha. Donut and soda and time for bed.
Well, I've got to go put this podcast to bed. I'm going to be doing that as we kind of wrap up. Thank you very much, Mark. You've been wonderful and providing color as usual.
I'll see you in Pittsburgh.
I will be there.
Beautiful.
For the IBM convention. So until later, and which, by the way, I'm going to be hanging around for another day. I'm going to be attending Monti, which is the Midwestern Magicians Alliance of Western New York. Yeah. And that's going to be a one-day convention. I'll be reporting that tomorrow. So we've got another full day of a convention. I'm going to report here tomorrow as well. So stay tuned for that. But this is all from Buffalo for the 50th 4F convention. So here we go. Off to the sunset. Thanks again, Mark.
Thank you, Scotty. Good night.
Good night. This is Scotty out.